Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Anthony Wade. It is June 5th. For today, we will be reviewing two scandals in the headlines today from the apostate church system. We're going to start with an update on Robert Morris, only because it's the shorter of the updates. This is from MikeCharisma.com, which is surprising because it's telling the truth. I think it even beat the Roy's report. I don't think Roy's has anything on this yet. Let's just read. Robert Morris recently made headlines after pleading not guilty in court for 5 counts of lewd and indecent acts with a child in regards to the abuse case that allegedly occurred with Cindy Clemenshire when she was only 12. Now, additional court filings have revealed shocking details about the knowledge that Gateway Church's elders had about this case. According to the Christian Post, these documents claim the elders of the church knew over a decade ago that Morris had a highly inappropriate relationship with Cindy Clemenshire. Filings also hold that a statement from Morris he was actually allegedly going to read to the congregation back in 2011 when an anonymous email was sent to both media outlets and all of Gateway's elders. So let me start with one of the facets of the apostate churchianity, the purpose-driven church system, is this problem that exists. It exists in all the local churches that I see too. Is this this notion that the cult of personality pastor is held accountable by their board when there is no accountability. They purposely select people that they know will be completely beholden to them, that will be yes men to them, that will seek to protect the individual siloed church as opposed to the body of Christ. So, assuming all this pans out and is true, it doesn't surprise me, by the way. But if you remember when the story first broke, the board actually tried to downplay the scandal. They tried to say basically what Morris said, that he just had like an indiscretion with a young lady. And then when the truth came out that the young lady was actually 12 years old, which would make her a child, not a young lady, then the board said, "Oh, we have been misled. Robert Morris misled us." And now, if this is proving true, it turns out the board was lying, right? Because the filing holds that a statement from Morris, he was allegedly going to read to the congregation 14 years ago, was sent to all of the Gateway elders. And Morris is facing his own problems and he may face jail time. But these elders, whoever they are, need to be held to account too. I don't know if they're still serving as elders at Gateway, which now has a new pastor. But if they are, they need to be gone immediately. And I might add, I don't know if they have any criminal exposure for knowing something like this and not doing anything about hiding the information. This is the same protective nonsense we saw in the Bicklegate Firefly report, that everything was about protecting the brand, not the sheep. Continuing, in the statement, which was not shared with Gateway congregation, so the statement was, he was going to share it and he didn't, Morris admitted to acting inappropriately with Clemenshire, writing, "I have been told that it was about 2 weeks before her 13th birthday. Although I knew she was underage, I was shocked to hear this because she appeared much older. My behavior was completely inexcusable. I am 100% at fault." Of course, he didn't read this statement, but the parsing of it is just kind of really sickening, right? So it's like, well, I knew she was underage, but I didn't think she was 12. She looked much older. Well, underage would be 17. 12 and 17 is a 5-year differential. And technically, this is a few weeks before her 13th birthday, so let's say 13. So it's only a 4-year difference. Exactly how much older did you think she looked? And if you're about to engage in a sexually abusive relationship with somebody who you are admitting here that you knew was underage, wouldn't you be vaguely curious how much? underage. Reportedly, Gateway decided that reading the statement would include issues of invasion of privacy laws, nonsense, as well as publicly embarrassed Cindy Clemenshire. Only if you named her. You didn't have to name her, right? This is the same nonsense we saw with Mike Brown, right? It's I didn't want to embarrass Kim. You didn't have to name Kim. You didn't have to name her to admit that what you did as a minister. Reportedly, Gateway decided. I'm sorry, I just read that part. Now Morris's lawyer, Bill Matea, told Dallas Morning News that he is certainly deserving of the victim's punches, but is tired of being the punching bag of Gateway's current leadership as it tries to play its game of blame shifting. So it is interesting that Morris's own lawyer is like, I'm getting sick and tired. Yeah, in other words, he understands that the victim deserves to punch Robin Morris, but the board was just as liable. Well, not just as liable, but certainly liable. Mateo stated Gateway forced out Pastor Morris not because he was not transparent with Gateway leadership about his relationship with Cindy Clemenshire, but that the church knew the facts. Mateo further noted the Gateway's decision to not disclose Morris's interactions with Clemenshire was a deliberate process that included verifying Morris's story, consulting with lawyers who advised against disclosure in order to protect the victim's rights, and fully taking into account the victim's family request that it not be disclosed. But yet, everybody involved, even if all of that nonsense is true, then they allowed for 14 years him to continue to serve, rake in millions and millions of dollars through his abusive tithing teachings, knowing full well that he had done this to Cindy Clemenshire. And we shouldn't lose sight of that fact, right? It's so beyond the pale to, and this is supposed to be a church. The last part is about the fact that Morris wanted money as a retirement benefit, which is absurd. But I also, before moving on, want to reiterate that, while this story is horrific, Robin Morris was a heretic before the story broke. He's always been a heretic, right? This is the guy who designed the God will curse your money theology. He's sitting on $100 million of personal wealth that he's fleeced from the flock, which, assuming he beats the rap on the criminal charges, he'll get to live out his life in the lap of luxury based upon the blood and sweat of the sheep. I don't have any more words about this, but I do have words for this guy, Sean Feucht. Sean Feucht, this is the second scandal story, accused of financial mismanagement, spiritual abuse, and whistleblower report. Before we get to the Roy's reporting on this, I wrote this in 2023, August 2023, ending our Dominionist grifter Sean Feucht rags to riches by fleecing the flock. So I'm just going to read what my observations were in 2023 about the finances. In just 1 year, from 2019 to 2020, Feucht increased his income by 31,000%. Can I get a hallelujah? His ministry, which lists Sean as the only employee, went from $280,000 in revenue to $5.3 million in just 1 year. Can I get an amen? Strangely, and possibly illegally, Feucht lists zero contributions and claims all the money is all from speaking honorariums. That's a heck of a lot of honorariums. So what did suddenly flush with the millions that Feucht do? Did he thoughtfully and prayerfully give some to charities and gospel causes? Just kidding. He purchased 2 homes worth over $2 million for himself. The first one was a 5-acre piece of land in Montana, worth over $700,000, and the other was described by Rolling Stone as a home in the glitzy, gated community of Coto de Caza in Southern California. Coto de Caza is home to many celebrities. Pursuing the real estate pages reveals that Feucht actually got one of the cheaper homes in that area, as that was only $1.3 million. The average was much higher. I saw one listing as high as $8 million. Nice digs if you can afford it, which now Sean Feucht apparently can. Not content with these, his ministry also purchased a $1 million brick row house on Capitol Hill so he could send people to lobby Congress on his behalf. Most investigative journalism shows is that this residence is not even used. Who cares if you can afford it, right? This is the backdrop because Mr. Feucht continues this grift until today. He now finds a national platform in Charisma News because they are the source for all things Dominionist. That was 2 years ago. Now, turns out my questioning was prescient. Reading the Roy's reporting, popular worship leader Sean Feucht, who made his fame 5 years ago by staging impromptu worship concerts in protest of COVID shutdowns, has been accused of spiritual abuse and financial mismanagement by his various ministries. On Sunday, 5 former employees released a whistleblower report and a website opposing Feucht, calling for him to be removed from positions of leadership and financial stewardship. Having witnessed firsthand what we have witnessed about Sean, we can no longer encourage any financial contributions to him and his endeavors. We can no longer encourage anyone to work for him, paid or unpaid. We can no longer encourage anyone to partner with him in any ministry capacity. Feucht, 41, a former worship leader at Bethel Church in Redding, California, parlayed his Let Us Worship movement during the second half of 2020 into a batch of outreaches. These included Sean Feucht Ministries, Burn 24/7, Let Us Worship, and Light a Candle. Despite his unsuccessful run for Congress in California in March of 2020, he has gained access to the White House under President Donald Trump, leading worship sessions there. He was the worship leader at that recent debacle where Paula White led a kind of faux worship service that like Greg Locke and Landon Schott live streamed from. Good look. In the report, Feucht's former employees allege that he's committed serious moral, ethical, financial, organizational, and governance failures. The report is signed by Christy Gafford, Peter and Amanda Hartzell, Liam Bernard, and Richie Booth, all who previously worked for the prayer-centered nonprofit Burn 24/7. They are calling for an independent investigation into their boss's financial transactions and governance practices, which I'd be very surprised if Sean Feucht agrees to, since Sean Feucht, at every turn that anybody criticizes him, cries persecution. They allege that Feucht has continually underpaid his staff, exaggerated attendance numbers at his ministry events, and diverted donations to his own properties. They also claim Feucht has longstanding patterns of manipulation, exaggeration, controlling, lying, gaslighting, and spiritual and emotional abuse. Because Jesus. While they say the long-haired worship leader has been confronted about these issues multiple times over the years, he's refused to make any concrete changes, instead has threatened his accusers. Individuals who have attempted to raise concerns or confront misconduct have been met with retaliation, public defamation, exclusion from ministry involvement, and threats of litigation. The report stated, this includes statements by Feucht suggesting that those who raised objections were no longer Christian, or they were politically motivated, accusations that are both defamatory and unsupported. Additionally, the report alleged that the boards of Feucht's various ministries have failed to exercise proper oversight and accountability of his activities. It's an interesting crossover to our previous story. The former employees back up their claims through several witness testimonies, detailed tax records, real estate records, and years of firsthand experience. They also said that this report corroborates the recent finding from Ministry Watch's database that found Feucht Ministries had an F transparency grade. Ministry Watch urged donors to withhold giving to this nonprofit. The Reuters report reached out to Feucht for comment, but did not hear back prior to publication. TRR previously reported on the worship leader's history of minor criminal offenses. The whistleblowers allege that Feucht is guilty of years-long financial mismanagement. They said Feucht regularly used business credit cards, for personal expenses, diverted donations into his accounts, and even used ministry funds to rent his own cabin in Montana for a ministry board meeting. Liam Bernard, who was a leader with Burn 24/7 from 2013 to 2020, 7 years he worked with this guy, said he had to cover the cost of attending ministry events out of his pocket. Bernard volunteered 40 to 50 hours a week for the ministry while working a full-time job to support his family. 7 years. When Bernard questioned the financial transparency of the nonprofit, Feucht reportedly responded with aggression. Bernard said that after he left the ministry, Feucht called them derogatory labels such as communist, fascist, and woke. Make sure you understand it contextually. So 7 years he volunteers for him, 40 to 50 hours a week. And when he notices these inconsistencies with how he handles finance, and he confronts him as any good Christian brother should, he's labeled a communist, a fascist, and woke. Feucht also started rumors that Bernard had deconstructed and was no longer a Christian, which of course Bernard denies. I felt like a shiny new toy for Sean to play with, Bernard said in the report. He often uses people as opportunities to get to the next level, and when they're no longer useful, he discards them. How Christian. Another employee, Richie Booth, who worked as a volunteer. Before we go on to that, I love this picture here, Real Faith. Sean being interviewed by Mark Driscoll, another guy who stole money from his old church up there in Mars Hill. Another Dominionist idiot, who sits. I just did a piece on Driscoll, trying to tell us what a real man is. Like a real man is somebody who packs his family up in the dead of night and it runs away from church discipline like he did in Seattle. Anyway, another employee, Richie Booth, who has worked as a volunteer providing administrative support for Burn 24/7, Light a Candle, and Let Us Worship, said Feucht underpaid or failed to pay many workers. He alleged Feucht never reported these workers in tax filings. Remember, go back to my article from my devotional from 2 years ago, right? He listed only himself as the only employee of the entire ministry. The ministry generated $5.3 million. He claimed he was the only employee. He tried to parry this off to like other categories, claiming like they had volunteers. A Form 990 filed in 2020 for Sean Feucht Ministries lists Feucht as the only paid employee, alongside 36 independent contractors. But the whistleblowers contest that multiple of these contractors worked more than 40 hours a week and thus should have been classified as employees. Those are violations of labor law. Additionally, Feucht lacks some financial reporting accountability. In 2022, the worship leader petitioned the IRS to reclassify Sean Feucht Ministries and Let Us Worship as churches. Because of this reclassification, the two nonprofits no longer have to release income and expense reports. Absolutely. And while we're at that, I first came across this little scheme by Franklin Graham. Franklin Graham, back when Trump was running the first time, was reported that he was receiving $880,000 a year as salary from the two nonprofits he runs, Samaritan Purse and the Billy Graham Association, right? 660 of it came from Samaritan's Purse. And he got roundly criticized for it. It's like you run a alleged Christian charity ministry and you bring down a salary from them of $660,000 or something, $600,000, something like that. So what did he do? He lobbied the government to classify these two entities, which are clearly not churches, as churches in terms of the IRS classification, for the sole purpose of no longer having to reveal the ministry expenses. Because, Jesus. And apparently that's exactly, so Sean must have modeled himself after this little grifting scheme. And he lobbied and or applied rather, and got the government to reclassify Sean Feucht Ministries, it's not a church, and Let Us Worship, one of his other organizations, as churches. And they agreed. Disgusting. Prior to this, Sean Feucht Ministries revenue jumped from $283,000 to $5.3 million, which is what I outlined 2 years ago. Between 1919 and 2020, Warren Smith, Ministry Watch president, previously told the Reuters report that Feucht's nonprofit only spent around $1.1 million of the $5.3 million on ministry expenses. That means the ministry assets ballooned to more than $4.5 million. There is nothing wrong with growth, but it is reasonable to expect that a ministry with more than $4 million in cash should be spending more money on the ministry it is promised to do. So he took in $5.3 million, but he only used $1.1 for the expenses of running the ministry. Can you guess who got the rest? An extensive 2022 report on Feucht in Rolling Stone also noted Feucht's more than $4 million increase in 2020, adding, the accounting for this surge is curious. The ministry claims to have received $0 in contributions, which I pointed out 2 years ago, despite Feucht avidly soliciting such gifts. Feucht owns millions in real estate, which, again, we covered 2 years ago. The former employees also noted that Feucht owns 10 homes across California, Montana, and Pennsylvania. 3 are collectively worth $2.5 million. The other 7, all located in Pennsylvania, operate as rental properties that are estimated $1.8 million in value. His ministries also maintain a considerable portfolio of real estate assets spanning multiple states. For instance, Sean Feucht Ministries owns properties in expensive neighborhoods in California and Washington, D.C. that are classified as tax-exempt parsonages. I first came across that little scheme with, oh gosh, my mind's blanking on the guy who says he made $1 billion, Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Copeland, I believe, has a $6 million residence that he writes off for tax-exempt purposes as a parsonage. One parsonage in Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., is known as Camp Elot. This is the one I referenced in the writing. Was purchased for $967,000 in 2022. Another parsonage in San Juan Capistrano, California, was purchased for $3.45 million in 2024, which would be after my devotional. So, not content with the gated community, the Montana ranch, the D.C. loft, the 7 places in Pennsylvania, he spent another $3.5 million on a parsonage in San Juan Capistrano, California. Right. The ministry ownership of multiple high-value parsonages, along with Feucht's personal ownership of numerous rental properties, raise questions about appropriate use of nonprofit funds, do you think, and potential private inurement, the whistleblowers write. Feucht posts about a spirit of offense. While Feucht has not publicly commented on the allegations, he posted on Instagram yesterday about the spirit of offense. The spirit of offense is entangling an entire generation in a perpetual cycle where victimhood becomes the highest virtue. But who has been more victimized than the Son of God? Yet he used his very last breath to forgive all of his offenders and offenses. Yeah, well, you're not him. Okay? First of all Sean Feucht does is play the victim card. That's all he's ever done. Anytime anybody says anything about, this is persecution, and it's not a spirit of offense. It's a spirit of mammon, of grifting, of lying, of fleecing. And those spirits are all resting on the head of Sean Feucht. He continued, life is too short to live in constant offense. When it makes you barren, mean, and grumpy. God is too good and too forgiving to us all. We should be as well to others. I'm not sure if he's saying, hey, he's trying to float out the balloon there to, hey, just forgive me. Feucht is married to 4 kids. The website adds, his heart is to bring integrity, hope, and inspiration to every sphere of society. His next Let Us Worship event will take place in Los Angeles and then Colorado this weekend, because the grift never ends. So, as I wrote 2 years ago, Sean Feucht was a worship leader for Bethel, for Bill Johnson. So we know why he has no sound doctrine to speak of. His ministries pulled out a respectable $263,000 or what have you when he was just the worship leader for Bethel. But that wasn't enough for him. So he took advantage of the darkest time in our country, in our world, in the last century, COVID. He realized astutely and saw how much opportunity there was to be the voice of dissent against the government, because and he's not the only one. I mean, a lot of the grifters within the charismatic church did the same thing, and a lot of quote unquote solid passes like John MacArthur, Shane Eidelman. They also got hit upside the head with the MAGA stick, and but he parlayed it. He did something different. He wasn't just preaching. He was, because he doesn't really preach. He sings, but he went out to, like, George Floyd's protests, not in support of George Floyd, of course, but in support of, whatever white people he could find to attend his concerts. And he parlayed that into a 31,000% increase in his revenue to 5.3 million. And then of the 5.3 million, he only spent $1 million of it to actually run his quote unquote ministry. And now he owns, sounds like, well over 10 properties, lucrative $1 million properties, some of which he's writing off as a tax exemption. I'm not sure if Julie Royce linked the website. I don't think she did. But, you should Google this. There is these people, these five these are not nobodies. These are people who served with Sean Feucht for many, many years at high-level positions. They have the receipts, and it appears that they have brought them. Go to the website. It is quite stunning. Very well organized, detailed, 10 different sections in the website, supported by documentation, financial mismanagement, abusive personal treatment. I don't hold out great hope, because the church is very bad at holding anybody accountable. I mean, just look at Dr. Michael Brown is, actively every day posting, 10 different things on a social media again, so, if you can't hold, him to account, I don't know who's going to hold Sean Feucht to account. Who's his board? Does he have a board? Who's gonna do the investigation? Bill Johnson? But at the very least, hopefully it forces people to stop giving him money. I don't know. I mean, he's already with the in crowd. He's already Paula White's worship leader for prayer services at the White House. He's already met and shook Donald Trump's hand. So he may be good for the next 3 years. Yeah, he shouldn't be, but he never should have been. Kudos to the 5 former employees, to the whistleblowers, for having the guts to say, hey, you know what we've been a part of was bad, was decidedly unchristian. I mean, many might be surprised. I'm not. Like I wrote about this 2 years ago. This guy, anytime you go from 263,000 to 5.3 million, and all you do is play a guitar, something going on within the church. Something's going on. And apparently what's going on is Sean Feucht, landed a mega grift, and he wrote it, and he's invested all of the money he's stolen from people. He's bought real property, which is worth real money that he gets to ride into the sunset with, in all likelihood, even if this destroys his ministry. Even if Chris Valentin and Bill Johnson actually dare to hold somebody accountable. They wouldn't hold Sean Bowles accountable, so I don't know why they're going to hold Sean Feucht. Maybe there's a Sean thing going on with Bethel. I don't know. But even if that happened and his ministry, withered away, he's got over 10 properties worth, it sounds like, close to $10 million. So, not quite the $100 million to Robert Morris fleece, but Morris did have to do that over 4 decades. So, at any rate, this is the update on the national state of scandal within the apostate charismatical church. I would say mark and avoid, but Morris is gone from ministry, and hopefully you already knew to mark and avoid Sean Feucht. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section. Give it a thumbs up if you like the video. Share it. All that fun social media stuff. I try to respond to everybody. But I do thank you for your time. Thanks for stopping by and test everything. old fashioned.